Newsfirst Newsline.
Hello there, a very good evening and welcome to another edition of Newsline. Sri Lanka is at a crossroads right now. We are facing multiple crises, including an economic crisis and now a political crisis. But like a raven rises from the ashes, our hope and prayer is that Sri Lanka will rise anew, a better country from the ashes that we're in right now. And in Sri Lanka's rise back into good grace among global powers, uh, there is a massive role that the youth have to play. And I believe this was highlighted in the youth struggle or the Aragalaya protest that was ongoing that resulted in this political change that was brought about in the country that could not have been accomplished for the longest time through the usual political or the traditional political setup. And to discuss the role of the youth in Sri Lanka in politics, we've got with us today one of the youngest members in the legislature of the country. He's none other than the General Secretary of the Ceylon Workers' Congress, Jeevan Thondaman, parliamentarian. A very good evening, Mr. Thondaman, and welcome to this recording of Newsline. Mr. Thondaman, first question. Sri Lanka is going to make, or the Parliament of Sri Lanka is going to make some important decisions in the coming days. You yourself, as a member of the Ceylon Workers' Congress, would have attended some of these meetings where the people's mandate that has been given to our representatives in Parliament will now be used not to just make decisions for us Sri Lankans, but to appoint the next executive president or an acting president for that matter. Where have these discussions gone? Has your party reached any decision on who you will support for the position of prime minister and for the position of acting president?
Good evening. Good to be here. But now to answer your question, if you've followed the events that have taken place, right before the resignation, you would have noticed. I think people had reached their boiling point as well. I think for them enough was enough, and it was their way or the highway. And the president, following that, he had once he had ensured a safe exit, he sent his resignation through email. So right now we are in the midst of a political crisis that we wanted to, get away from. Unfortunately, here we are. So, all this was completely due to the Aragalaya and their protests. And, there are talks of it being diluted and various other elements coming in. But the reality of the matter is, they've achieved what they set out to do, which was the resignation of the president. So now I personally feel what needs to be done is a peaceful democratic transition of power. You can't, now, you should allow the constitution to take over and, adhere by that. And, party government. So initially, we had come to the decision that, first of all, a national leadership council must be established, consisting of party leaders. And all what I'm telling you is for the interim period alone. So a national leadership council must be established with certain party leaders. Then a cabinet must be formed. And those that are sitting in the cabinet should not have a place in the national leadership council. And basically the duty of the National Leadership Council is to advise and conceptualize policies, and the cabinet is to implement it. And the third aspect of this, which is parallel with the two bodies I mentioned, is the advisory board. I think advisory council, as they call it, I'm not too sure in the name, where it's a citizenship platform. All the groups in Aragalaya will have their representation. At the same time, civic societies and various other parties that are not in the parliament can take part in that. So a citizenship platform, more or less. And other than this, the main question at hand is who is going to be the premier and the president. Now, there are people who are saying we don't want current acting president Ranil Wickremesinghe as the president. That's a fair thought on the side of the people, considering what all they have been through. But you have to understand the pressures of the people should not pave way for a bad precedent. We can't allow the constitution to be overridden. Now the prime minister, the acting president, he is in charge for the next 7 days. and allow the democratic transition of power to take place. Let Parliament convene and let Parliament decide on who the president is. Or, Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe might win again, or it might be somebody else. But whoever comes forward, people have to accept them. That is the way forward, and this is what I see. And as to answer the second part of your question, as far as the party position is concerned, we have been in discussions with various party leaders. We have attended, various council meetings as well. Myself, Honorable Senthil Thondaman, the party president, and Honorable Rameshwaran, the party chairman. But however, before we come to a decision, we need some clarity on who the person is going to be. We are not just going to accept anyone and everyone for the sake of stability. So we need to see who that individual is. And we'll put it forward to our party, and we will come to a well thought out decision before the vote. That is for certain.
Mrs. Thondaman, previously you made a
Sorry, I took
statement.
too much time for the long.
No problem, Mrs. Thondaman. We are here to take your point of view because at the end of the day, you are an elected representative. You represent the people, your constituency, and by and large, the people of Sri Lanka. Mr. Thondaman, you said that the constitutional process needs to take its due course, and that the people of Sri Lanka must accept the next person who Parliament appoints. How far do you think that Parliament should take into consideration the views and aspirations of the people in appointing this next president? Are they free to vote on their own will for their personal agendas to bring whomever they want into power? Or should they more listen to the people? Because you said that the people need to accept the leader appointed by Parliament.
Right. Let me just clarify that. Now, at the state we are in right now, right, the 200 the parliamentarians as a whole, they have seen what public pressure can do. Public pressure can make the head of state resign. And he's not just the head of state, but, former President Gotabaya Rajapaksa was also the symbol for the Jana Peramuna party, which is the ruling party, especially after the resignation of all, Honorable Ramal, former prime minister. So he was the sole symbol. So when that symbol has left, when that symbol has abandoned ship, right? So even the ruling party members must understand what the public want. You can't have party politics anymore. That is what I meant to say. So I just want to clarify that the people's interest must be put above, a person representing community A, B, or C. So, following that, so I genuinely believe that the parliament will leave politics aside. I don't think they will try to use their majority. I personally don't think so. I don't think they will use their majority and try to put somebody in for their own personal agenda. I think we're past that point. Right now, everybody wants stability because, we are one step away from the edge. We are one step away from total anarchy. And, we have to see on how to fix this. So that's what I meant.
Mr. Thondaman, we've had a few names that have been submitted for the position of acting president, or a few prospective candidates from Parliament. The most recent being parliamentarian Dallas Alahaperuma. Before that, I believe opposition leader Sajid Premadasa also threw his name into the box. You spoke about the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna and the fact that it's clear that they've lost the mandate of the people because their sole symbol, who was the executive president with a two-thirds majority in parliament, commanding the governing faction, has jumped ship, and the way that he did it, of course. But in the end of the day, when you see a person like Dallas Alahaperuma, who was instrumental in bringing President Gotabaya Rajapaksa into power, who is an active member of the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna. However, recently he became independent, or he announced himself as an independent MP. That was only a few months ago. Where do you think the people's wish would lie, especially when it comes to a person like Dallas Alahaperuma taking the presidency? Do you think that will maybe calm the storms? Do you think the people will accept him?
No, now as far as Honorable Dallas Alahaperuma is concerned, I can't comment on his behalf. So, but what I personally feel is, people had one demand, which was for the former president to resign.
Mr. Thondaman, a statement was released by Mr. Dallas Alahaperuma announcing his candidacy.
Correct. So that's, up to him. He wants to contest. It's his duty to get the numbers and go forward. I can't canvass for him.
Right.
Neither
Okay.
can I canvass for Honorable Sajid Premadasa. I think they have to put forward what the economic recovery plan is and what they have in place. Because in an all-party government, you need everybody on board. Given the current situation, you need all parties to come on board and work together towards a common solution. But anyway, keeping that aside, as far as Honorable Dallas Perma is concerned, now he came forward. Now, on the SJB side, Honorable Sergeant Premadasa has also mentioned, if I'm not mistaken, that they would be willing to come to a sort of pact, a sort of arrangement with Dallas Perma for a all-party government.
Right.
Now, to your question about whether people will accept it or not, see, we have to understand that we are on the brink of crashing. I personally feel we haven't hit rock bottom yet because we are getting there. The rural population is going to feel the pinch much harder than what they are feeling it right now. If the country goes on without any sort of direction. So the rural population will feel the pinch harder. And, right now, if you look at it, one of the demands of the article here has been fulfilled where the president stepped down. And, I know there are certain elements which are canvassing saying, we can't allow any poor to a person to be in the government. But if you ask me, that is irrational because, right now, the only solution is elections. But to get to elections, there's a bit of a journey. And you can't cross that journey with the very people you want to oust. If you want to remove party A, B, or C from parliament, do it constitutionally. When the election comes in, do not vote for them. Educate people to not vote for them. That is the way forward. You can't run right now. If you look at it, if you look at all the people who have contested under the Portugal symbol, there's about 153 who have won are in parliament. So when they are in parliament, you can't isolate them and form a government by yourself. You can't run the country with 50 parliamentarians. That's not going to work. So, but I do feel that you should, people have given this to the opposition and to the independent parties on a golden platter. People have, it's purely because of the people's protest, where the government has completely toppled. So I feel the opposition and the independent parties, including us, should respect that this is a mandate given by the people. So we should learn to respect that and see how we can guide the people out of this to elections. And I don't think, and personally, if they feel any MP is not going to adhere to people's wishes, then they should name and shame that MP. I don't see any fault in that. So, then people will also know. I think that is the democratic way forward. You can't expect to get everything by force. Now, for example, recently the Parliament road, you would have heard about the issue that took place there. And, one thing that did, bring some sort of positivity was the fact that Aragalaya, most of them, to my knowledge, denounced the entire protest that took place in Parliament. Because even they know that this is not the way forward. They have achieved their means. So now the parliamentarians need to take over and they need to do what they are elected to do. So that is my personal opinion on this. And, even with the given situation, to be very honest, I'm sure you'll ask this question later as well. But to answer just in advance, my personal opinion, not my party's opinion, but my personal opinion on the matter is, there are talks that whoever is going to be the interim president should not have political aspirations, should not assert the executive presidency, should not contest next presidential election. They should not have a political future. So, when there is a talk going on like that, to me personally, again, that is not what we should be concerned about right now. There's a food shortage coming. There is a gas issue going on. There's a fuel issue going on. The focus should be parallel. You can't just focus on the politics of it alone. That's my personal opinion. So when that's the case, personally, what I feel is the reason why we supported Ranil Wickremesinghe is because I don't know if he plans to contest next election or not, but the probability of him contesting, as opposed to Honorable Sachin Premadasa or Honorable Anura Kumar Dissanayake or Honorable Maithripala Sirisena or anyone else in Parliament, the odds you would be able to make it out yourself, right? So I personally perceive Mr. Wickremesinghe as a short-term solution. That's my personal view. My party may feel different, but that's the point of democracy.
But Mr. Thondaman, of course, you're entitled to your personal view. But just to pick your brain on this matter, the general opinion that is reverberating around the people is the fact that Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe wasn't, or the acting president, I beg your pardon, Ranil Wickremesinghe, wasn't really even appointed to Parliament. he lost the parliamentary elections, came in through the national list, which is completely legal, by the way. But of course, there is a question on how far ethical it is to lose an election and come in through the national list. But he's the first acting president of Sri Lanka who assumed the post of the executive president after losing an election. So, generally, what the people say is that he doesn't have the mandate of the people. So, on this matter, how do you justify your personal
Now,
opinion, at least?
my personal opinion, and it's going to be a very unpopular opinion, but I think as a parliamentarian, we all need to tell people the truth as well, and this is my side of it. So what I personally feel is that with Honorable Ranil Wickremesinghe, now with what data, with what um, facts can you claim that he doesn't have the mandate of the people? I'm not saying he has a mandate of majority of the people, right? I'm just trying to say that the same rules have to apply to everyone. The same standards of judgment have to apply to everyone. Now there was former President Gotabaya Rajapaksa. He had the mandate of 6.9 million people. And today you claim that he doesn't have the mandate of the people. So when a person who has 6.9 million people can go from there to having no mandate, why can't a person go from having no mandate to having some mandate? That, so you can't judge by you saying that Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe doesn't have the mandate, then who else has the mandate? Does the leader of the opposition have the mandate? Or does JVP Kumar and the have the mandate? Or we won't really know till elections are ahead, which is why I reiterate that the solution for this is elections. But to get to that elections, you need to steady the ship. You can't crash and burn altogether. You can't. So that is my personal view.
Mr. Jeevan Thondaman, of course, these views that are coming out right now, very important to stir conversation among the general public, requesting the general public to support a solution that will bring stability to Sri Lanka. And it's important that the people are informed, not only just about the politics of the entire matter, but also regarding the practical aspects of this entire matter as well. We will cross over to a short commercial break, and on the other side, we will focus a little bit more on the role of the youth, and especially the role of youth parliamentarians in this transitional phase, where a majority of Sri Lankans now have faith in the youth to bring about change in our country. Stay tuned. You're watching Newsline.
Newsfirst, Newsline.
Welcome back. You're watching Newsline. We're in conversation with Parliamentarian Jeevan Thondaman, the General Secretary of the Ceylon Workers' Congress. Mr. Thondaman, we were speaking about a little bit of the political aspect and the practical aspect of said politics, especially in Sri Lanka right now when we are facing a crisis. And the Washington Post has, of course, called it the center of the global crisis. Mr. Thondaman, the youth were extremely instrumental in bringing about change in Sri Lanka. We remember when the people came out and said, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa must resign, former Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa must resign, there needs to be a change in the government. I believe you too distance yourself from the Rajapaksa regime. You were a former state minister. And when the people called for these matters, the parliament refused to bring a no-confidence motion against former Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa. Parliament refused to impeach former President Gotabaya Rajapaksa, and that is what led the youth of this country to step out to the streets and demand for change for almost 100 days. It's leading up to 100 days very soon. We're just a few days away from it being 100 days. That's a very long time, Mr. Jeevan Thondaman. The youth of the country have proved that they are resilient. Now, you, despite your constituency being in a certain limited geographic location, as a young member of parliament, you invariably represent all the youth in Sri Lanka. The youth will be looking up to you for leadership, maybe even more than other parliamentarians who have been in parliament for years and years and have failed over and over again. So as far as the role of youth in parliament goes, now I know that there are a very few young parliamentarians in parliament, but do you all have any discussions going on about the current situation and how you can contribute more to bringing about the change? Because it's a known fact that when you're younger, you're more innovative, you're more prone to take risks. You are, well, a little bit better at thinking than maybe when your mind is a little bit worked out towards the end.
So, so the problem with me being a parliamentarian is that, I walk a fine line where my constituents are on one side, and at the same time, like you said, because I am, young and in parliament, I am in a way representing the youth. So, I mean, there may be youth who may not, like me per se, but at the end of the day, I am young and I am in parliament, so I do have a duty to speak. So the fine line between my constituents and the youth is that, they don't see eye to eye in many subjects. But still, I feel I have done right by my conscience from the time I've taken my oath as a parliamentarian. But to be very honest, we are here today completely because of the youth and because of, especially the youth that use social media for a positive result and not just for negativity. That's something to commend. But we also have to recognize where we are heading. The youth, the problem right now in Sri Lanka, not apart from the economic crisis, is not just corruption. There is also a very big disconnect between the parliamentarians and the youth of this country. And that is simply because the parliamentarians who are in parliament, I think a majority of them are the same ones who've been in parliament for the past 30 years. So when they've been in parliament for the past 30 years or 40 years, there tends to be a generation gap. They don't think the same way the youth of today think. And that is exactly why we are here. We are here because we couldn't offer solutions, we couldn't open our ears. And, unfortunately, the youth representation in parliament is quite minimal. So, in our voices, even though how loud we try to make it, it was still silenced. So, the reality of the matter is that because of that generation gap, we couldn't echo the parliamentarians couldn't echo the sentiments of the people. For example, when people wanted a change in the central bank governance and when people wanted a change in the finance instrument of the cabinet, the government decided to go for an entire cabinet reshuffle. And, that showed that they were not echoing the sentiments of the people. And, it was just taking more for, the playing the gallery, as they say. So, and I think people had enough at that point. So right now, sometimes, something needs to burn for you to rebuild it. And that's where we are at right now. Right now, Sri Lanka is burning. And I personally think the youth would be able to rebuild it. Given that a citizenship platform is ensured, accountability is there, and transparency is there, and communication is there. I feel if these three boxes are ticked, then I think our future will be good.
Mr. Jeevan Thondaman, we're in the final few minutes of the show. One final question. It's something concerning that I just received a message some while ago, and I was just wondering to myself if we are going to play this role over and over again, because Sri Lanka has been in a spiraling kind of situation when it comes to repeating the mistakes of our past. The same scenario surrounding the rise and fall of former President Gotabaya Rajapaksa was also seen during the time of President Bandaranaike back in the day. It was the same majoritarian kind of arguments that were brought forward that when he rose to power, and then his inevitable fall, and we're repeating it right now. And just a few days after the resignation of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa, today I received a chain message, as you call it, on social media, claiming that the downfall of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa was orchestrated by certain factions. They've named certain people. They've also referred to their religious backgrounds. And to put it quite frankly, I don't want to give publicity to this message, but to put it quite frankly, it was a racist message, instilling racial tensions among communities. And it's almost, I don't think it's a coincidence that these messages have now started circulating again immediately after President Gotabaya Rajapaksa has resigned. On this aspect, the promotion of these majoritarian ideas, the promotion of racial disharmony among communities, how will it play out during this crisis situation? Because that is what got us here today. And people need to acknowledge that. And there are certain parliamentarians and certain leaders who are saying, you know what, let's leave the past where it is, let's focus on the future. But it is through looking at the past where we can learn and identify our mistakes so that we don't repeat them in the future. How do you see this?
Well, I mean, I'm sorry, but I might have to correct you there. I think there are only two entities that speak about racial disharmony in Sri Lanka, and one are the politicians and other the media. Unfortunately, that's the reality of it. I'm not specifying which establishment or which institution, but if the hat fits, then it fits. So but I think what you see out there, especially after these protests, is that racial disharmony does not exist amongst people. It does not exist amongst a place where people want to genuinely change. When now people are talking about a system change, but many people are confused as to what is the system change. Is it to abolish executive presidency? Is it electoral reform? Is it a new constitution? No, it's none of that. It's just that everybody wants to be able to hold their governments accountable, to hold the people they vote for accountable, and for the person they vote for to be genuine person. It's not much to ask, but it just, it got overcomplicated over the years, and we witnessed, I think, the evolution of politicians lowering their standards with every session. That is, a very unfortunate thing. Now, for example, I was criticized for claiming that my party took a stand during the no confidence that we were going to abstain. But the reason we did that is because we knew the opposition was not going to bring no confidence. People have to understand that even though I do speak on a broader sense of Sri Lanka, they have to understand that we don't, as a minority, even though we hate calling ourselves that, as a minority, it is difficult for us to go against one political entity in the hopes of, continuing our political career. That's not how it works. Today, the two people who are fighting on both sides tomorrow will come together. We saw Ranil Wickremesinghe and Gotabaya Rajapaksa come together. I never thought I would see it. But, people did, so stranger things could happen. So, people have to understand that if push comes to shove, we will stand with the people. But, they have to understand that the community I represent, we don't have the same privilege as the representatives of the other communities. We are still far behind in the race. And that's why we have to go forward. And that's why I reiterated. I said, I'm not, a personal fan of Ranil Wickremesinghe. I'm not a personal person who canvasses support for him or campaigns for him. But right now, I feel that every other party coming into the government, it would just lead to politics. For this interim period, there is a seasoned politician who cannot overpower the parliament or overpower the people simply because of the fact that he lacks parliamentary strength. But at the same time, Porto is there without a symbol. And we as people should not listen to elements which are distracting, but rather entertain this idea. At least, the man should be given the benefit of the doubt where he could present his economic recovery plan. And if people are not happy with it, yes, he can go home. But that's what I would like to see. Unpopular opinion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jeevan Thondaman. Of course, if you want to call it an unpopular opinion, you can. There might be people who agree, there might be people who disagree, but I think one thing is for sure, it's a very, very practical opinion. And of course, I believe the stance that you took and the statements that you made on this show will indefinitely prove to the people that more youth representation is needed in Parliament because the youth think differently. And across the world, looking at the examples from a global perspective, we have seen that countries with more youth leadership, countries with younger leaders have fared much, much, much better than countries with much older leaders. Thank you very much, Parliamentarian Jeevan Thondaman, for joining us via Zoom for this discussion. Of course, we hope and pray that you may be able to join us physically for a more maybe, what can I say, a feistier discussion on your unpopular opinions regarding the situation in the country. And we'll see what the people think about them. Thank you very much once again, Parliamentarian Jeevan Thondaman. And thank you very much to all our viewers out there for tuning in. Until we meet again, take care and God bless.
Newsfirst, Newsline.